Hey, hello there, and welcome to Talking with Tony. Talking with Tony on YouTube. This is season 14, episode 4. If you're new to Talking with Tony, we're reminding folks here in season 14, the previous 13 seasons were on WOW. You had to be a subscriber of WOW to be able to watch it. But our relationship with WOW now is over, and we've moved over to YouTube. We're very pleased to be on YouTube. We're reaching in fact the entire country. Today, you're going to hear from our film critic, John Perkerson, again. He appeared on episode 2. This is episode 4. John also tremendous in college football, and we're going to talk some college football, of course. He's a University of Georgia grad, so that the two-time defending national champions will get his thoughts on their first game. I've been looking around my place. I'm in Auburn, Alabama. Our producer, Jake Barton, today is in Newnan, Georgia, and John's in Newnan, Georgia. And I've been searching my place looking for a cigar because week 1 against the spread, the picks I gave out went 4-0. Just going to go over them real quick before we introduce John. I started on the Thursday night. I said Nebraska and the points. They didn't win the game against Minnesota, but they easily covered the spread. They should have won the game. And then on Friday, I kept seeing the line drop with Stanford. The professional gamblers and the other experts were betting Hawaii. And it just didn't add up to me. I said, Stanford, first game under a new head coach, a lot of spirit, a lot of enthusiasm there, a physical football team. Take Stanford. I don't even think it's going to be close. It wasn't close. That got victory number 2. Victory number 3, you might see that I'm wearing Ohio State jersey like I always do. Today it's Trevion Henderson, the jersey that I'm wearing. Ohio State was favored by 30, 31 points on Saturday. I said way too many points for the road. Indiana gave a great effort. They're a well-coached football team. They hung in there. They only trailed by it was really a 7-point game at the half, ended up being 23-3, 20 points. That's victory number 3. And then we wrapped it up with the Auburn Tigers against Massachusetts. I knew Hugh Freeze was going to make a statement in week 1. And he may have been favored by 35, but he won by a whole lot more than that. So 4-0 against the spread. Episode 5 of Talking with Tony that will be released later on this week. I'll be giving out a few more picks, but you can't do better than 4-0, and I still can't find that cigar, so that might be good. All right, recapping. Episode 1, I wore Marvin Harrison Jr. Episode 2 with John, I had a Buca's jersey on. I came back with Jack Sawyer for episode 3. Today, Trevion Henderson for episode 4. Time to bring John Perkerson in. John, when you faced my Ohio State Buckeyes last year for the national championship, you didn't have to face Trevion Henderson, but I'm sporting the jersey today anyway.
All right. Well, Tony, you're starting to sound like an Alabama fan, missing all these injuries and everything. So the good news is about YouTube, I guess I can get a little more explicit with my language now. I'm sure my bosses will love that. But no, I mean, yeah, I mean, end of the day, if Marvin Harrison Jr. doesn't get knocked out of that game, I do wonder how that game turns out. But I think everyone can agree. I mean, that game was truly the national championship game last year. Whoever won that game was going to beat the brakes off of TCU no matter what.
I think you're exactly right. And Georgia showed why they were worthy of winning another national championship by defeating TCU in the manner that they did, 65-7. Now, I have to take my hat off to Deion Sanders. Now, look, I'm not jumping on the Colorado bandwagon just yet, but they did go on the road as 21-point underdogs and defeat the defending national runner-ups, if you will, in Texas Christian. This week, they're favored over Nebraska, who I just mentioned was one of my picks in week 1, and they covered. I haven't even had time to look at it. That's why I'm not releasing any place, but I give them Colorado all the credit in the world for getting that first victory. But I'm not ready to put them in the college football playoff like some of my friends are, John. I think you can understand.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the thing is, TCU is still going to be a good team, but that's not the same team they had last year. And, let's be honest, Nebraska hasn't been relevant in football since Eric Crouch won the Heisman there. So, I mean, Colorado's going to start off 2-0. I forget who their week 3 opponent is, but they'll probably get 3-0, maybe 4-0. But then once they start getting to Oregon, USC, if they play Washington, some of those stronger Pac-12 schools, we'll see how legit they really are. But, I mean, I got to give it to Coach Prime. I mean, he did a good job getting those guys prepared and canceling out all the noise. And, I mean, his son looked great. And then, Travis Hunter, who I got to watch a couple of times when he was in high school, I mean,
I mean, he's just up the road from where you are today, is where Travis Hunter is from. So,
Right. Yeah.
the kid's played more than 60 snaps at the half. I mean, he can't keep that kind of production up the whole season, but he will certainly get Heisman consideration just for what he does on both sides of the ball.
Oh, I mean, without a doubt. I mean, he played 103 snaps yesterday, and I take 103 steps, and I'm out of breath. So, I mean, he's an impressive young man, and he always has been. Now, he wants everyone to know how good he thinks he is, and he's always been like that. But when you can play like he did, especially with that interception he had near the end zone, I mean, you can talk all you want if you're that good.
And Colorado seems to be a team that's going to talk an awful lot. 86 new football players in this age of the transfer portal. If you've seen any of our previous episodes this season, or if you saw any of the previous last 2 years talking with Tony, I'm not crazy about the transfer portal. I'm not crazy about name, image, and likeness. And I'm totally against realignment. I'll go ahead and state it again. When I grew up and as a kid, I looked so forward to the Rose Bowl every year. It was the Big Ten champion going out to face generally UCLA or Southern California. Now, sometimes Washington would be there and sometimes another school would be there. But, generally UCLA or Southern California. The Big Ten was Ohio State or Michigan. When I was young, Chuck Long, I remember, with Iowa a couple of times. They had some Big Ten championships under Hayden Fry for sure. Wisconsin had some teams, but it was usually Ohio State or Michigan. But anyway, now the two teams that I remember seeing most from the Pac-12 or Pac-10 then are going to be in the Big Ten. And I'm so against it. I realize it's all about dollars and all about bucks. Now, Cal, Stanford also going to the ACC leaving. We're left with Washington State, Oregon State, the Pac-12 right now. And I want to remind everybody, the Pac-12 showed up in week 1 of college football. There was no struggles for their teams. And as people say, don't step on a hand grenade in week 1. Well, they didn't and turned some heads. And it's a shame that we're breaking up a conference that looks like right now, we're 1 week in, but it looks like right now is one of the top conferences in college football. And I hate that for our West Coast friends that love college football.
Well, nothing screams Atlantic Coast Conference like, University of Cal and Stanford. So, it's just one of those things. Like I heard, I listened to this. I always forget the names of these recruiting services, but one is called OM3, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
One of their podcasts, and somebody broke it down best. With the transfer portal, with NIL, with these guys just making so much money, basically all this conference realignment is all about is just joining all these forces together because collective bargaining agreements are coming and they've just got to be able to find a way to, just cover all these new expenses that are going to come along. And, college football always kind of has been a big business, but now just with everything, it's just more, it's NFL junior and, kind of accepting that and still trying to find a way to enjoy it. But, obviously, the Ohio State USC Big Ten matchup of the week, that's going to be weird once that's happening and, 2025 and everything. And, this expansion's not stopping. And it's just one of those things where you got to learn to accept it and figure out what's going to happen and roll with the changes or, just kind of maybe hop off board and find something else. I'm not a huge fan of him in general, but I do think Eli Drinkowitz over at Mizzou, he had the best point about, what's going to happen to our more minor sports when all of this stuff happens. Your kids who play soccer have to play a Tuesday night game and then have to go to class and everything else. I mean, I think online enrollment is already up, but those online classes are about to shoot up with even more athletes with all this traveling they're about to have to do.
Unfortunately, I had to attend the funeral yesterday, and the couple that I was talking to has a son. He's extremely into soccer. He's 8 years old. He's very good. And I said, what are you going to do if he goes to Rutgers and he plays soccer on a scholarship? And Rutgers, is now in the Big Ten, and they have a road contest oh, say at Washington or say at wherever, like, how are you going to get to go? I mean, how will the parents get, is there going to be a hub place in Dallas everybody meets up for a month and these kids don't take classes? It's just a mess. And it's all because of money. And I was tuned in to Ohio State and Indiana on Saturday. Gary Danielson and Brad Nessler, who everyone seems to hate in the SEC. I don't criticize broadcasters, but I will say this. They acted like they'd never left the Big Ten. They were showing clips of the two of them together in the 90s when they worked for the ESPN broadcasting. They didn't even mention well, they've been covering SEC football. It was so set up. There's Tom Brady before he was the GOAT. And the other one goes, yeah, he was just a lamb then, clearly set up for him to try to embrace the Big Ten with this new deal they have. The Buckeyes will play Notre Dame later on NBC in prime time. So there's multiple, networks getting in to try that. And now the Big Ten is continuing to expand. And those of you who follow me on Facebook who were aware of the show before we came over to YouTube, and it's there. It's Anthony. Best way to find me is Anthony Jones in Auburn, Alabama. I do annual predictions in college football on the first Saturday. I traditionally do it the first Saturday Auburn plays. And the people who have messaged me said that the line they love the most is when I refer to the Big 10 or the Big 30 or whatever it is that they're calling themselves, because it's just getting ridiculous, John. And is it going to be two conferences one day and the best 12 teams go to the college football playoff? I mean, what the old saying, like name, image, and likeness, John. Once the toothpaste is out of the tube, how do you get it back in?
Who knows? I mean, honestly, what I think will probably happen, and this isn't an original idea for me, is you'll have like your top 64 teams. And I think a lot of this realignment now is to try to be in the Big Four, however you want to say it. They may just form their own little thing, and 12 of those 64 go to the college football playoff every year, and everyone else is just there. It just changes so much, and trying to pin it down or put a prediction on it to me is just it's not going to do any good, because everything I thought may happen hasn't happened, and things I thought would never happen have happened. Because I remember when this all started about 10, 11 plus years ago, everyone thought the Big 12 would be the first conference to go under because, Colorado left, Nebraska left, all those places left. And now the Big 12 looks like they're making some of the biggest moves besides the Big 10. I mean, there's just no telling how this thing's going to end up when it's all said and done. It's the wild, wild west right now.
I want to say something that you said. I want to echo and give you credit. It was shortly after University of Georgia won their first national championship. And even though name, image, and likeness was there, you said that you were happy that before it got too crazy, Georgia had won one, because you said it's only going to get crazier and crazier. And I think that's something that UGA fans can feel good about. Look, they feel good about winning both national championships, but I would be lying to you if I told you that college football meant to me what it did 5 and 10 years ago. It didn't even mean then what it meant to me as a kid, as I got older and I learned, more things and things that can be done recruiting wise. But I remember you saying that about it was just going to get crazier and crazier, and you have been absolutely correct.
Well, I appreciate that. If anyone needs a psychic reading, just let me know. I'm not guaranteeing 100% correctness, but yeah, I don't know many people who work in college football. A lot of the stuff I wind up is hearsay or reading it on internet message boards or something, but you just hear about these hours that these coaches are putting in, and just how many of them are trying to get to the NFL because it's just such a better work-life balance. It's going to be interesting to see what happens in the coaching ranks with college football, because these guys, they're always constantly working. And you have guys who get on with college football programs working on a support staff. They're like, to heck with this, and they'll go back and coach high school instead of that. So it's going to be interesting to see how that shakes out with just the people who are involved in working in college football as well.
I will never be convinced that Roy Williams and Mike Krzyzewski and some of the other coaches, it'll be Leonard Hamilton next year, got out of college basketball, if I think that they're still in it, or at least some of them are still in it, if name, image, and likeness isn't a thing. And I don't know David Shaw personally. I've admired him from a distance for years and years and years, the former Stanford coach, but he took one player in 2 years, the transfer portal. They didn't do too much name, image, and likeness stuff. And now with this new coaching staff, they are sort of relaxing some of their rules and some of their academic requirements. The statement is to go against the competition that we are facing, which is still high academic standards. But Stanford's a utopian society, and anyone that I've ever known that has had that opportunity to go to Stanford went to Stanford, and I just feel bad. They weren't able to get to some of the great athletes that other schools were able to get. And I just feel like if it weren't now for this transfer portal, in which Stanford did utilize under this new coaching staff, I think Shaw would still be around. And I hope we haven't seen the last of him, even if it's in the NFL or something, because I think he was great for the game and his teams are always good. I love that physical defense Stanford brought. And truth be told, full disclosure, I just started writing a book, but it's fictional, but it's about a kid who gets to play baseball at Stanford, who is from where you're at right now in Newnan, Georgia. And I've learned an awful lot about Stanford in doing the research, and I respect so much of their academics and the Hoover Institution and so many things, but I just don't care for the way that you just nailed it. It's the wild, wild west now. And it just is, we can complain and go back and forth. But it's not going to be like we want it to be, or like the good old days.
Yeah. I mean, it's just learning to accept it and learning to, what's the corny saying, change is inevitable, or except from a vending machine or something like that. I'm butchering that saying, but it is what it is. And just try to enjoy it while I can, and, just roll with it and just see where it all ends up.
Before we move to the movie part of the show, and you are one of two main TWT film critics, and actually our lead film critic, I have to ask you about Georgia's opening game. I was a little alarmed when I saw the first score, but it was like 7-0 after one quarter. And I was like, but you know what? This is the first game for these kids. I always had butterflies every single time I played a sport, whether it was the first game or the 15th game. I was like nervous. There are things to work out. You're lining up against somebody else and all. When it was all said and done, they had coasted to victory like we expected. What were your impressions? There seems to be an awful lot of attention on Carson Beck and his performance.
I tried not to hit the panic button. I do try to make some jokes on social media and everything, and some people appreciate it, some people do not. But the thing about Beck is he hasn't taken a snap in a game since 2019. I mean, you go 4 years without getting live snaps. Yeah, you may be a little rusty. You may overthrow. You may underthrow. You may miss your target. Just give him time and see, because the one good thing about UGA's, especially opening 3 to 4 games, it's not like we're going through a grinder of a season. I mean, this is the perfect season to be breaking in a brand new quarterback. And the thing I want to remind other folks too, it could be worse. Like, we could be Florida or LSU right now, who both just got shellacked in week 1 and have a lot more questions than answers right now. And one of my buddies who's a Florida fan goes, you really love trolling the University of Florida. It's like, you daggum right I do, because majority of my life they've ruined a plenty of last Saturdays in October. So I will never shed a tear when the University of Florida is struggling in football.
I didn't give Utah as one of my 4, but that was my 5th, so it would have been 5-0. And the reason I said it is that, it doesn't. Cameron Rising may not play, but he is one player on that Utah football team, and they are still very good defensively. I always look at defenses. People want to talk about all these 5-star running backs and wide receivers and all, and I look for depth. I look at what goes on at that offensive line and defensive line. The game's still won at the line of scrimmage. You got to have quarterback play, and you better have defensive linemen. And and I look at the overall scheme of the defense and, who the coordinators are. And it's not that I disrespect Florida. It's just Utah still has a really good football team. They're the defending Pac-12 champions also. And I remember them going to the Swamp last year and giving Florida all they could want there in week 1, when people said, oh, they're going to, melt down in this humidity and all. They've never been in a situation like that. Well, they have some altitude situations there in Utah as well. And when I was in great shape of life years and years ago, about 18 years ago, I remember getting out and we were out in Utah, in Park City, Utah, and I couldn't sleep. I went running, got in late. I got up early. I slept like an hour and a half. I went running. Then I could run 3.5 miles without any problem. I got a mile in and I was, what's wrong with me? But it was the altitude. Altitude 1, me 0. And I think Utah is a decent football team, not disrespecting Florida. I'm not disrespecting the SEC, but I think it's wrong to panic. LSU looked terrible against Florida State. Folks, that doesn't affect them in the SEC standings. If they win the SEC West and they're in Atlanta playing, we assume, Georgia in the SEC championship, that's their goal, is to get to Atlanta.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. You gotta keep your eyes on the prize. And, that's one thing, excuse me, I try to teach my players, our non-area region, however we describe it in high school athletics, those games matter because we want to do well and we want to learn from them. But at the end of the day, when we play the teams that affect our standings, that's when we got to be 100% on all the time and make sure. So, yeah, I mean, obviously Florida and LSU, this doesn't do anything with them SEC wise, like you just mentioned, but I'm sure their fans would have been a lot more appreciative if they had, won their games. And SEC Shorts had a pretty good video about them this morning. That was good. So I always enjoy getting to the Monday afternoons, getting to see that old funny man over in Birmingham, and then SEC roll call. Just those always make Mondays a little bit more bearable.
There you go. It doesn't hurt when a Monday falls on a holiday either. And that doesn't hurt Mondays as well. In my house, we've been watching plenty of U.S. Open tennis, which goes with this time of the year also. And I want to congratulate the Americans. They are doing exceptionally well so far. Let's transition into movies. I have told you before, I am looking so forward, anticipating Killers of the Flower Moon so much. And it's not coming out until October 20th. Do you ever remember a movie when you knew the date was coming out and it just seemed like it was never going to get here? You're just so looking forward to it. Some people are like that, I guess, with Star Wars movies. I'm like that with movies that I believe could be nominated for Best Picture at the Academy Awards. I haven't seen too many of those yet. And typically they're released in December and late December, so they can be eligible for award season. But so far right now, I could only pencil in Past Lives and Oppenheimer for what I believe will end up being nominated for Best Picture. But I have such huge expectations. Can you take me to a time where you had such expectations for a movie to be released?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the most recent one is, Top Gun Maverick. I mean, how many times did that daggone movie get delayed before we finally got to see it? Because, first it was
two or three at least.
Yeah, I mean, it was supposed to come out in 2019, and then it finally got out in 2022. So, I think that's the one that's on the top of my mind right now that I'm thinking of, just, being excited to see. And it's like, gosh almighty, is this movie ever going to come out in theaters?
I feel that way about Killers of the Flower Moon. Are you on par with me, as far as like Oppenheimer will get a nod for Best Picture and certainly have every right to win it?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be the first to admit I see more of the blockbuster type movies, and I know you see more of the, Oscar nominated films, but that's one of those where they both kind of meet the intersection. And I know we talked about it last time. Yes, it was 3 hours long, and yes, it had some parts that were sometimes got a little tedious, but I mean, as far as just what you're looking for in just a movie that is entertaining, checks all the boxes as far as performances, direction, special effects, all of that. I mean, I feel like that could be a big sweep for them come, February, March, whenever they're hosting the Oscars this year.
John, I went into Asteroid City with a little bit of expectations, but when I left there, I was like, I would really be alarmed if this movie is successful when it comes to award season.
Yeah, I remember like we talked about last time, going and seeing that and being like, I don't know what I'm watching, but this is awful. So on my phone most of the time playing Wordle and checkers and just being completely checked out.
Yeah, you and I go see a lot of movies together. In fact, in Sunday school last Sunday, somebody said to me, "Have you seen such and such movie?" And I said, well, "Let me just go ahead and tell you right now. There's not a movie playing at the movie theater right now that I hadn't seen. I've seen them all. Okay, I mean, like that's just the plain truth. And everything but like animated things. I don't like that. Don't You're not going to catch me at that. But I've seen every other movie. They were like they asked me like 10 and I said like yes I've seen like 10 movies. But what I love about going to the movies with you is you don't mind sitting in the back with me because we can do multitask. A lot of Americans can't do that. We can do that. And if we're in the back, we know if we take out our cell phones and check the sports scores and read the news, it's not going to disturb anybody else. If I was sitting on the fourth row, I would never bring my cell phone out. If I were sitting in the 10th row, I would never do that. If I were on a date with my wife, I would not do that. But if I'm with you, you don't mind me checking out, the horse racing results from Saratoga or Del Mar or whatever I want to do. And you're usually doing the same thing. And sometimes we need it because the movie's so bad, we need it as a distraction.
Oh yeah. I mean, no offense to you. That one movie we went and saw Bones and All. I was just like, all right, it's time to play chess or something, learn a little bit. We picked some winners here and there, but we've definitely picked some pretty big losers as well.
But you are like me. You go see so many movies that you're gonna have so many losses too. Though we're putting ourselves out there. It's like if we're in World War II and we're on flying missions, we're more likely to get shot down because we're going up almost every day. I mean, to go see every movie at the theater, you got to go about every other day, and that's about what I do. This week, I'm gonna from my own place, my own studio. I'm gonna kind of take in some Hitchcock movies. I did this little over a year ago, did a Hitchcock marathon of like what I thought was his top 20 movies. And I'm going to do some of that in the next 3 days. I can't wait to see North by Northwest and Catch a Thief and Vertigo again and Rear Window and all. So I will be going to a couple of movies this week, but most of the movies I'm going to watch are going to be at my house. And I think you can appreciate that. And I think you take in a lot of movies at your house too, whether it be Apple or Netflix or another media outlet.
Yeah, I try to because I do have one of those subscriptions where you can go to the movie theater basically as many times as you want to. But there's just sometimes, especially after a day of work, you're just like, you know what? I'd rather just go home and relax and just watch something there instead of trying to get to the movies and finding somewhere to park, getting a ticket, and all that. So definitely pros and cons to both. But just glad that movie theaters are still an option right now, just because didn't look like they were going to be around much during lockdown.
Well, and what if the writers continue on with their strike or another COVID seems to be reappearing in some places and some circles? We may run out of new movies to see. And I remember checking out what movies were playing during COVID. You get like 4 movies playing, and some of them might have been from 1988 or 1996. There wasn't a whole lot of new releases.
Oh, yeah. I mean, one of the most fun things that happened, and it was December 2020, a group my brother used to work with, every December, they do a Christmas vacation party. And one thing we did is we went to an AMC and rented out a movie theater and just watched it on the big screen. And I mean, it was cool because I was too young to see that movie in the movie theaters, but all my brother's friends who are around, 40 to 45, they're like, man, this just brings back a lot of good memories, just being able to watch this movie in a movie theater.
Brilliant minds think alike. I mentioned my book that I'm working on, and I wrote the outline. I've only wrote a couple of chapters, but I wrote the entire outline. So I know how it's going to come out. And there is a part where the Yankees are playing the Nationals in Washington, and it's washed out. It's rained out. It's August, I believe. And one of the players has his uncle there, his favorite uncle there, and says, like, hey, I'm going to call the theater. He tells his nephew, he says, like, you get as many of your teammates as you want to go. Look, we're going to rent out the whole theater, and we're going to go over there and move. Brilliant minds think alike, renting out the movies. And it was probably great to see that National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation on the big screen.
Oh, yeah. It was a ton of fun.
I felt that way when I recently saw Casablanca on, they do it like sometimes 50th anniversary through the years. They've done it 75th anniversary and so forth and all. It's just nice to see things that I didn't think I'd have that opportunity. I saw Jaws a couple of years ago, but the quality wasn't that good. And I was kind of disappointed from that. I know you're about to go see The Hill. I've only got 1 minute remaining, but what do you anticipate from that movie?
It would be curious to see. Kind of like this renaissance Dennis Quaid is having with his career, just, finding these more kind of, I guess, faith-based, but not overly faith-based films. And just, obviously his last movie about baseball, The Rookie, was a great movie. I remember that from middle school. So it'd be interesting to see him doing another baseball movie.
Yeah, I think I will enjoy seeing it as well. John, as always, I want to thank you for taking the time and doing Talking with Tony, episode 4 of season 14. I appreciate you and I appreciate our friendship.
Yeah, thank you, Tony. I always appreciate coming on here and you allow me to spew my nonsense.
No, absolutely not. You're a vital part of the success of Talking with Tony. And folks, I know you like him. Don't worry. He'll be back plenty of more times. That wraps up, though, episode 4 of season 14 of Talking with Tony. We'll see you next time right here on Talking with Tony.